Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of SFE Stories. I'm Billy Bolden, the Assistant Dean of Students and the Director of Sorority and Fraternity Engagement. And I'm here today with the 2016 Collegiate Panhellenic Council President, Tack. What's going on, Allie?
Hi, how are you?
Doing great. I'm doing great. Allie, why don't you get started for us today and just introduce yourself to everybody? Tell us who you are. What were some of the things that you were involved in as an undergraduate? What are you doing now? What does life look like for you? Let's get all those updates from people.
Yeah, so like Billy said, my name is Tack, and I was council president, but I also, prior to that, was vice president of recruitment education on Panhellenic as well. So served two different roles on Panhellenic, which was great. I'm also a member of Delta Zeta, so I was our chapter secretary, was also a Rho Gamma prior to moving into that vice president of recruitment role on Panhellenic. And then after graduation, I actually worked for Delta Zeta as a consultant, primarily working with our new chapters and then doing a colonization at the University of Oregon. And then after that, did not anticipate this necessarily, but ended up joining staff full time. And now I'm one of our directors of chapter services for Delta Zeta sorority as well. So still in sorority world, very much so. But I also live back in Des Moines now. That's where I'm from. I'm from the Johnston area. So living back there in West Des Moines and working for Delta Zeta remotely, which looks a little bit different right now with all things COVID related. Usually I travel, I would say, a decent amount, and we are not doing that right now. So I'm kind of stuck in Des Moines, which is different than what I'm used to. I'm used to being on the road like at least once or twice a month, I would say. So adjusting to that.
So fascinating, because I think a lot of us think like, oh, the people that work remote, like this is easy for them. They just do this all the time. Like, and I was talking to another friend of mine. She's like, it's not that it's not easy or that it is easy. She's like, but I can't go sit in my local coffee shop anymore. Like, so I'm literally also stuck in my house.
Yeah, I used to very much be like once or twice a week would go to a coffee shop, would just like get a change of scenery. And I mean, in Des Moines, things are a little bit more relaxed now, but I'm still just not really doing that. I mean, I can go out and get coffee, obviously, and come back home, but I have to be like so intentional now of like finding reasons to leave the house, or I think I could be in my house for like 3 days straight without leaving and not realize it, just because I don't go to work every day. It's definitely an adjustment, but it's still good.
You find your hours are harder to maintain now during COVID also, like your like set schedule, or do you just work all the time?
I don't think they're too hard to maintain. When I first started working remote, I had a really hard time with like the hard cutoff at like 5 or whatever that day looked like for me. And some of my coworkers had to be like, okay, Allie, like you have to stop your day. Like the work will still be there tomorrow. You should not be sending emails at 10 p.m. But I just like wanted to get it all done. And it's hard because you don't see everyone else like leaving the office and stuff like that. I mean, I work a fair amount with volunteers, and so I'm flexible to their schedule. So I have evening calls a couple nights a week, but it can definitely be hard working remote in general to like turn off work, because even when you do, like you're making dinner and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I see my work computer over there. I could do that one thing really quick while that's in the oven.
You're like, I got 20 minutes. I can't do anything else, you know.
Right.
Might as well respond to some emails. Yeah, I totally get that. Well, thank goodness for good colleagues, right? That are like, you've had enough. You've got to stop for the day. That's a huge win.
Yeah.
I'm curious for you in your story how you even got connected to sorority. So here you are, career sorority woman, the quintessential recruitment queen, right? During your undergraduate days, from Rho Gamma to VP recruitment to council president, just love recruitment. What inspires somebody like Tack to even join a sorority to begin with?
Yeah, so I'm from Johnston, and if you are at Iowa State, you probably have met someone from Johnston, because a lot of that graduating class, I would say it's like 50% goes to Iowa State, 50% goes to Iowa, right? And so I knew a lot of like women older than me who had gone and joined sororities. And so I think that definitely like sparked my interest. But I will tell you that going through recruitment, I like wasn't 100% sold that I was going to join a sorority because I was on Iowa State's dance team. And so I already had that like, 30 some women that I like had gotten close with over the summer through practices. And like, that's a huge time commitment. And so I wasn't like sold that like I could, one, do both, but two, that like I needed that as well. Just looking kind of, I think for what a lot of people initially go into recruitment, they see like that friendship, like sisterhood side of it. So I like wasn't sold on that right away. But then once I was in recruitment, I was like, I love this. This is so fun just getting to talk to people every day. After I had like one meltdown moment that I think every woman going through recruitment has, because you experience rejection for like the very first time in college. It's like your first thing you're doing. You arrive, you start recruitment, and then I think it's inevitable that you're going to get kind of some sort of rejection or feelings hurt during recruitment. So I had that. I called my mom, who was like, I don't know how to help you. I'm not with you in Ames. Like, should I drive there? Which if anyone knows my mother, you know that she was probably pretty close. Maybe she could have been in the parking lot for all we know, just being like, are you sure you don't want me to come? But she was like, it'll be okay. And then I continued through. That was like my day one breakdown. But then I loved it. And I brought up that concern basically with every chapter of like, can I make this work? Like, this is my involvement. And I think, that's advice I give to anyone, is to like share your concerns. Like, might as well get that out in the open and get your questions answered. Because I found that there were a lot of chapters that were like, oh, we have someone who's in, on dance team or is a cheerleader or does club volleyball, and they make it work. And so as I went through, I became more and more sold, and then ended up joining Delta Zeta, and became in love with all things recruitment.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit more about how you manage that time, though, because sorority is a big time commitment. There's a lot of expectations and obligations along the way, a lot more optional things to jump into. Also, these incredible sisterhood relationships that you build with each other. But so is the dance team. The dance team is a collegiate athlete. Let's talk about that, right? And so, you live an athlete's schedule, an athlete's workload. You also have these incredible bonds and friendships with the other women on the team. And so how did you navigate both of those worlds? Were they more symbiotic with each other, or were they antagonistic, or how did you blend the dance team world with the sorority world?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I feel very fortunate that Delta Zeta, one, had other members who were on dance team. So they kind of understood what that looked like already. But they were also very understanding and accommodating. I think part of that is they recognized, like, I was a part of dance team before I joined Delta Zeta. And so like that was like a part of Allie, right? Like that's something I was bringing to Delta Zeta as a part of who I was. And so they were super understanding with that and kind of accommodating my schedule. But yeah, it was definitely having to be intentional of like, how can I also give back to the sorority when I have my time? So for me, I am like not a morning person, but I chose to do like my dance team workouts. We had like different chunks of time throughout the day you could choose, like in the morning, so that like on Mondays and Wednesdays, like I didn't have my workouts at nighttime, so that I could be at chapter meetings and like, attend things that we had on Wednesday nights, or like join that committee that met on Wednesdays. So I definitely had to be intentional with it. But there were also things that I had to miss out on with Delta Zeta, and that was really challenging for me as well, and kind of led to part of my decision of, I only did dance team for 3 years, and I would not trade that experience for the world, but I just knew I wanted to get more involved within my chapter and within Panhellenic. And so I kind of made that choice to do that for 3 years. And then I did 5 years at Iowa State. So then for 2 years, focused a little bit more on the sorority, which I am glad that I did, because I think it definitely led me to where I am today with having now a career with Delta Zeta.
Okay, let's hear your best Rho Gamma pitch for a woman to join a sorority at Iowa State.
Oh, this is putting the pressure on. Okay, so it's funny because I talked to a lot of chapters about recruitment, and as you know, like Zoom recruitment is a very real thing right now across the country. And so chapters are always like, how do we like even convince how do we convince them? It's such a different experience right now. And I'm always like, you got to be upfront and honest with them. And that's, I feel like, how I was as a Rho Gamma as well. You can't just like, I can put on my best sorority voice and like, sugarcoat it and make it sound like it's all sunshine and rainbows, but like people know that's not true. And they're like, we see that in the videos. Tell us what it's really like. And so I think that is, what I always did when talking to women as a Rho Gamma. I would tell them like, yeah, it's not going to be like your most perfect experience every single day. But when you have those bad days, like the reason you joined is because now you have a bunch of women that are going to like back you up through those tough days and like help you through the process. And like, yeah, maybe you are coming into this with like friendship and sisterhood and all of that in mind. But like there's so much more. Like, let's talk about the 17 different philanthropic partners that are on Iowa State's campus, or let's talk about all these other things that you can get involved in, and kind of approaching it from that lens rather than just, like the perfect, like bubbly answer. Cause I think that's not what everyone wants to hear. And like people are looking for like that authentic, like real, like what's it really like here?
Yeah, that's really good advice. I think that the more that we can create a sorority and fraternity experience where we can be our authentic self and ask those tough questions and have a bad day, and still be loved and appreciated by each other. I think that's what makes the experience so special. That was what makes Iowa State's sorority and fraternity so unique. We're our true self, and that's a blessing.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And, going into like a virtual recruitment season, I had a lot of women that were like, what do we do if like the connection cuts out or like if this happens? And I'm like, you tell her like, hold on, girlfriend, I can't hear you. You are frozen. I'll be right back. I'm going to move my computer around the house because I think the connection's better over here. Like she's going to appreciate that more than you talking to her and having no conversation because you can't hear what each other is saying. So just like, tell her what's going on and do your best stuff.
It reminds me, everything for me comes back to CrossFit. And so I judged a CrossFit competition a couple years ago in Minneapolis, one of the big sanctional events. It's called the Granite Games. And there's a piece of equipment in CrossFit called the assault runner. It's basically a treadmill that is completely man-powered or woman-powered or person-powered, right? So there's no battery pushing. It's your like movement that moves the tread. Well, there's a machine on it that obviously like counts the distance. And so in this competition, machinery fails all the time, technology fails. And so as a judge, like our role is if the machine fails and stops counting, our goal is to yell at the athlete, keep running, keep running, keep running, keep running. And there's a little piece of white tape and we're supposed to count that as it goes around, right? And so I just think about that in the same sense of like virtual recruitment. Like if technology fails, if Zoom starts to crash, if your internet is shaky, keep going, right? Like trying to find a way, keep going. We'll figure out a way to make it right after the fact. But if you just give up in the middle of it, there's nothing we can do to help you, right? So just keep going.
Like nothing is ever going to go perfectly. Like the recruitment that I helped plan, Sume and I, like it was like a torrential downpour the entire time. Like I remember just being sopping wet the whole time. So we had to be out there with it. And it's like, nothing's ever going to go perfect. And you just have to like embrace it. And like, I'm pretty sure I probably talked to women that recruitment that were looking at me like, this girl is literally like, I could have probably like wrung my hair out. It was so wet. And I was like, yes, join a sorority. Don't you want to be like this? Like, so it's fun.
So we happy to know that Panhellenic now has purchased a set of rain ponchos.
That was a wise choice.
Yeah. So they just sit in the office, and if we ever have a torrential downpour again, we can hand those out and give them to women to be successful, to live their best self, and to be great in recruitment. Yeah.
It was happening though. So
right. Okay, Allie, tell us a little bit about the decision to be a consultant. I think that a lot of sorority and fraternity members, are interested in maybe giving back to their organization for a year or two, maybe 3, in some cases after they graduate as a consultant. Tell us about that application process, the procedure, what students can do now to better prepare themselves to be successful in that role or that opportunity. Tell us about the consultant life.
Yeah, so I think if being a consultant is something you're interested in, like absolutely go for it. And I don't think that you have to have had a large leadership role like within your, council or within your chapter to be chosen or a successful consultant. I was a consultant with women who had been chapter president, which I had not been, had been on their Panhellenic like I had, or who just served on quite a few committees and were just like that leader that you find within your chapter that never holds an actual leadership position, right? So anyone is a good candidate for that. And no matter what you bring to the table, you're going to be someone that can connect to a chapter or chapter women from that lens, which I think is great. Obviously, I can only speak to Delta Zeta's process, but I think it's pretty similar across the board. There was an application process for, resume, answering questions, that good stuff. And then I actually flew to Indianapolis for an interview. So our headquarters is in Oxford, Ohio, which is, there's really no airport super close to that. Anytime I'm going to headquarters, it's like an hour and a half away. And so that was in Indianapolis just because, convenience. And they didn't say this, but I like to feel like that was like my first test of like, can this girl like get on a flight, take the shuttle, get to this interview, like, and handle it? Because that's like what consultant life is like, being on an airplane, handling all of those unknowns.
Part of part of it too, they probably like pray for like, can she get a delayed flight, please? Can the shuttle not show up? Just to test you a little bit more.
Right. I've never asked if that was part of it, but part of me now thinking back on it is like, it probably was. And I remember my flight got delayed and I was like sweating. I was like so stressed and the shuttle was taking a long time. And I'm like, I'm not going to get this job because I'm late. Like, no, that's part of the job is traveling. Like, why was I so stressed? Like I left a message for the person interviewing me because I didn't answer. Like I was so worried about it. And so then had the interview. It was actually an interview over lunch, which was something I hadn't experienced before, was eating during an interview. And if you talk to anyone about like what to eat and what not to eat, they say don't eat a salad. And I ordered a salad. So learned that after the fact, but that's okay. It was a super casual interview, which I wasn't anticipating. I think in college, you talk a lot about like interview skills and you imagine in your mind this like super formalized process. And so many of my friends that I talked to today, that's not necessarily how it is. It's a lot of times a more relaxed environment. But it caught me off guard a little bit to the point that I called and told, there's probably like text messages out there somewhere. My best friend, Amelia, who Billy knows because we were on Panhellenic together. She was Delta Zeta president too. And was like, I didn't get that job. That was the worst experience of my entire life. Like, what am I going to do with my life now? And she's like, okay, you're being dramatic. Let's just hold tight for a bit. But I was like, it was terrible. And granted, like I was still getting a degree at Iowa State, like could have gotten a job. It was just a very dramatic reflection on that. And then, yeah, I got offered the job to be a consultant. And Delta Zeta had kind of shifted their program that year to be more focused on new chapters and colonies. And so it was definitely not as much travel just because I was primarily colonizing a chapter, but that was at the University of Oregon and they start school later. So I got to travel for like the first 2 months basically, which was basically recruitment for 2 months, which I love, but it doesn't bring a lot of sleep. So it was exhausting, but great. But kind of going back to your original question after I went on a tangent, yeah, I would encourage anyone to apply for it. Each organization is looking, for people who are going to be go-getters and who are looking to, make that change and connect with chapters, because that's really, really what it is all about.
And I know from my days as a consultant too, I mean, it is a very independent lifestyle. I mean, it can be, not to like dissuade people from the experience, but it can be lonely. I mean, you're on the road traveling, meeting new people all the time, which is great if you like to meet new people. But if you're somebody that likes to have like several very close personal relationships, like you don't get to see your friends that often.
Yeah, that was good for me as well. Like I would see people going back for like a tailgate or something, and like I had to plan out my like time off that I got like at the beginning of the semester, right? So like everyone like impromptu being like, oh, instead of homecoming, we're actually going to go to Iowa State. I was like, but I can't do that. So now I get to watch you all on social media and be bummed about it. But yeah, it's definitely.
And I'll offer homecoming and none of you all are coming.
Right. It definitely can be lonely. And I was talking to someone else about this actually last week, that it's a lot of unknowns too, right? Like you're arriving at a chapter and you're not sure exactly what it's going to be like, or where you're going to be sleeping, or who's going to be picking you up for the airport. Like hopefully they remember. And so it's a lot of like unknowns too. And so I'm a planner, so that like I'm much more relaxed with all that sort of stuff now. But like that was an adjustment for me as well, is not knowing what you're stepping into all the time.
I think too, for me, like there's a lot of things as a consultant that before being a consultant, I never would have dreamed doing by myself. I just didn't think there were things that you do by yourself. Not that like I'm not comfortable by myself, but like going to the movies, I would have never imagined going to the movies by myself. And then when I was a consultant, I realized like I don't need other people to validate the thing that I want to go do. If I want to go to a movie, I'm going to a freaking movie, and y'all can come or you cannot. But like I'm gonna go see, this cartoon even in the movie, because that's what I want to do.
Right? Yes. Like I always like thought that was like something that would be so challenging to do, and then like you're by yourself and you're like, well, I either get like Jimmy John's for the 15th day in a row, like delivered, or I just like put my big girl pants on and I go to dinner by myself. And once you do it once, it's like totally fine. But it's that first time doing something by yourself that you just like are totally pushed out of your comfort zone. But it's better.
this is foolish and not something that I necessarily recommend, but it's a way that I made my life choices. But once a month when I was a consultant, I would go out to dinner and spend $100 on dinner. Like I would go to the nicest place I could find, and like I was that little old lady with a book in the restaurant. Right?
Yes.
But really a notepad. Really, what I would do is I would try to take everything that was just in my head, all my thoughts, and just put them on paper. And so I still try to do that to this day. I mean, I don't quite get out during COVID, but even prior to COVID, I wasn't out quite once a month, but I still try to go out and just have a nice dinner by myself to like decompress and just put down everything that I've been thinking on a notepad. And then later I'll go sort out and figure out what all those thoughts really meant, but just try to put out all these different projects and ideas and things that I've been thinking on. And being a consultant taught me how to do that. I mean, it taught me how to be independent and not be afraid and know that I don't need other people to validate the things I want to do, which is
it definitely made me like okay with just like being by myself. And like, you know, sometimes it would be like watching Netflix on my phone at a restaurant, or just, you know, doing whatever. And then there would be those like rare times that like, you know, the fraternity and sorority life advisor would be like, oh, there's another consultant here from XYZ. And you're like, this is the best day ever. You're like, can you please give me their contact information? Like,
see, when I traveled in the Northeast, my second year. My first year I did new chapters, but my second year I traveled in the Northeast, which we joked, I always ran the Delta Zeta consultants.
Yeah.
Everywhere I was, any directional school that I was at, which is most of where I was in the Northeast, like always, there's like one Delta Zeta consultant to the next. So no, we had a great time when I traveled for sure. So talk to us about this career in Delta Zeta, right? So, I mean, certainly freshman Allie, who was about to drop out of recruitment on day one, wasn't planning to be a career sorority woman. So what were your plans for career? How did that change? And tell us about your role here at Delta Zeta.
Yeah. So part of the reason I did 5 years was because I changed my major like 3 different times, which is normal. I always shared that when I did tours, because I worked for like the admissions office at Iowa State too. And I'd be like, the average student changes their major a bunch, and I am that person. So get ready for that. But I ended up majoring in elementary special education. And I absolutely loved that. Loved student teaching, but like had always been drawn to this idea of, again, being that consultant. And so I was like, this will be here for me. Like, I'm going to be a consultant for a year. Like, I'll come back, I'll get a teaching job. My mom, she just retired, but she was a teacher. So it was like, you know, kind of in the blood a little bit, I feel like. But I was like, I'll just come back and do this. And then as I was on the road, like we talked about, there's a lot of time to like reflect on what I wanted to do. And I just felt like I wasn't like done like with the sorority work. But like we also mentioned, it can be very lonely, and I wasn't quite committed to doing a second year of it. I absolutely loved it, but there were definitely times that I struggled with, you know, being by myself. And so I wasn't sure that I could like handle doing it for a full second year and be super happy. And I wanted to be happy because I knew if I wasn't, like, my work wouldn't be as valuable to the students I was interacting with. And so I was like really debating what to do. Grad school was in the mix for a while. And then I was just kind of exploring opportunities at different sorority and fraternity headquarters. So I was keeping my options open, quite frankly. I had, you know, kind of seen who was hiring, started applying, and then this position became open at Delta Zeta. And, you know, my heart obviously pulls me to Delta Zeta. And so when this position came open, I definitely was more inclined to pursue this a little bit further than other ones that I had been looking into. And so now there's 5 of us that do my same job. And so I work with our chapters basically in Ohio, Indiana, West Virginia, Kentucky, DC, and Maryland. So that's kind of my little chunk. We all have our regions that we work with. And it's a lot of chapter operations focused work. But I would say my favorite part of it is getting to connect with the students, right? If that's a phone call being like, how the heck do we do virtual recruitment? Or like, you know, where do I find this resource on the website? That's like my favorite part, which again, looks different because I'm not visiting chapters. It's a lot more Zoom and phone calls, but still getting those touch points, which I really like.
That's awesome. I love that. And I love that you've been able to find that passion for yourself and to know that this is the place for you to be right now. And maybe that's forever. Maybe it's not forever, but that there's good work for you to do in this role right now. So I love that for you. Allie, it's so hard to imagine that we are almost out of time.
I know.
These go so quick every week. I'm like, I have 12 more questions. So one day I'm going to have to do like a follow-up panel and do like a whole like Brady Bunch box with like all the people. And
you should like get council presidents like together, like the four, like.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
And, like we chat all together.
Yeah, that'd be a great
like the little days where we would sit in that little front office to have our meetings.
Yes. Yes. Well, you'll have to come by and see the office also, because we've totally transformed the office. Everything has been redesigned, redecorated. So definitely have to come and visit. But I got to wrap the interview up. So I got to ask you these final 3 questions, because everybody gets these questions. I can't let you get out of here without them. So the first one is, I want to know something from your sorority, whether it's something from your creed, an anthem, a poem, line from script from some public ceremony that you all do, but something that Delta Zeta holds valuable, that you learned, that you continue to live your life by today.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things, but the one that I would say comes to mind most is a line from our creed, and it's, to those whom my life may touch in slight measure, may I give graciously of what is mine. And for me, that's kind of encompassing that it doesn't always have to be like the big things, right? Like it doesn't always have to be a ton of your time or a ton of like your money, for example. It can be like the small things that really impact people's lives. So that could be like holding a door open for someone, or letting someone like go in front of you in line at the grocery store because they seem like they're in a hurry, or like have, a crying baby with them or something like that. It's like those little things that can make someone's day. I don't know about you, but like if someone buys your coffee in front of you in like the Starbucks line or something, like that just like makes my entire day like the best day ever. It's just remembering that those little things make a huge difference.
I love that. I love that it's so tangible, right? And it's a way for you to think about each and every day how you can do that. And it's not some big monumental task. But I think a lot of times when we start talking about ritual or creeds or things like that, it feels overwhelming. So I love that you can make that so simple for us.
Yeah.
Okay, so this may come out of sorority world for you a little bit, but curious about 2 things that either you're reading or watching. Maybe it's a podcast you're listening to, but where are you finding kind of that fun, learning, educational, just relax, whatever it is, from your reading, listening, or watching?
Okay, so 2 things. The first is I am like obsessed with the home edit on Netflix. Like that is goals. And people are like, I don't understand how she's saying like you find joy in pouring a box of cereal into a clear container. And I'm like, the thought of that like de-stresses me. Like I think that is just amazing. Yeah. And I wish I could hire them. I'm loving that right now. And then a podcast that I just started recently listening to is actually called the Glow Through It podcast. It is one of the people on it. One of the co-hosts is her name's Adriana Carrig, and she's actually a Delta Zeta and created the Little Words Project, which is bracelets that kind of promote like kindness basically, and kindness among women. And I had the opportunity to interview her for a Delta Zeta thing, completely different. But I started listening to her podcast because of that, and I just love it. It's all about like friendship and being kind to one another. So it's super lighthearted, a good like thing just to listen to kind of in the car.
Yeah, both great pieces of advice. I did recently actually watch the home edit. I like to watch shows like that when I'm cleaning. It just makes me feel like more efficient.
Next thing you know, everything's color coordinated.
Yeah, I did, however, make a trip to the Container Store recently in Des Moines. They were actually sold out of most of the things that I wanted, which, okay, everybody's getting their house together, so I get that. But I did actually, last night I just found at Target, I found a clear turntable, or Lazy Susan, I think they're called too, for my spice cabinet. So
there you go.
Huge win on that as well. So great advice. For me, I actually just started watching Grey's Anatomy.
Have you never watched it before?
Never watched it before. I like to watch shows that you can miss it and still understand everything that's going on. Okay. You don't really have to pay attention to it. It's just a good de-stress for me. And so Grey's Anatomy is for that. I'm sure people are like arguing with me right now that like, no, you are going to miss so many details. I'm not that into it. I'm into it enough to watch it, but not that I need to know every single detail. Yeah. But I noticed that it has 16 seasons. And so I'm like, this is going to get me through a long time of just casually watching while I'm doing other things.
And there's it's still ongoing. So like there will be
there'll be
another
more.
one.
Yeah, I love that. And then the book that I'm reading right now is this book here. It's called How Champions Think. So I've gotten really into like sports psychology and what is it that like drives athletes to continue to work harder or to persevere in different situations. And so I'm reading this and just thinking a little bit about how this translates into sorority and fraternity, right? As things have become more challenging for us, how do we persevere through some of these obstacles and challenges? So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah. All right, final question for you. This is the big one, the hardest one, and hopefully the easiest one. Allie, what is it that brings you joy?
That's like a loaded question, I feel like. So I actually teach Pure Barre as like a side hustle. So for me, like teaching Pure Barre, getting to help people with their fitness, and then like also like working out for me is something that like brings me a lot of joy, de-stresses me. Again, not a morning person. Like the only thing you'll see me wake up early for is like to catch a flight for work or taking a Pure Barre or teaching a Pure Barre class. So that's what would come to mind for me.
I love that. I love that. I love that you found a way to get out of the house.
Yeah.
Even as you work remote and in COVID, right? So it's something you truly enjoy and bring you back to some of those dance roots too.
Yes, definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Allie, so much for joining me today. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your experience. I'm going to give you one last opportunity to just share any final thoughts that you have with our viewing audience today.
Oh, okay. I feel like the pressure is on now to like leave with a strong message. I'll just give like a piece of advice, I'll say, to everyone would be kind of as you're working through your collegiate experience in a fraternity or sorority, or as like a chapter leader, is I would encourage you to constantly compare yourself and your chapter to itself or yourself rather than the others around you. I think that's what builds a really strong community and a really strong individual and a really strong chapter, is rather than trying to always beat that one chapter that's, down the road or across the street or, do better than them in recruitment, is like beat yourself. Because if everyone's doing that, then like the community is just so strong. So yeah.
Love that, Allie. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.